Long ago, in a village called Ijiro, where the land was green and the river sang softly through the hills, there lived a poor farmer named Adeus. She was not poor because she was lazy. She was poor because the rains had refused to fall for 3 seasons, and her small farm gave her only enough yams to feed herself and her old mother. Adeus was known in the village for one thing, above all else, her kindness. Even when she had little, she gave much. If a neighbor's child was hungry, she would share her last piece of yam. If an old man's roof leaked, she would help patch it with palm leaves. Even after a long day working her own field, the other villagers sometimes laughed at her. Adeus gives and gives, they said. But what does giving ever bring her? Look at her torn wrapper. Look at her empty barn. Adeus would only smile and say, a kind heart is never truly empty, even when the hands are. One evening, as the sun melted into orange and purple behind the hills, Adeus walked home from her farm carrying a small bundle of firewood. The road was long, and her feet were tired. As she passed by the old baobab tree at the edge of the forest, she heard a weak voice calling from the bushes, please, help me. Adeus stopped. Many people in the village would have hurried past, afraid of spirits or tricksters, who were said to hide in that forest after dark. But Adi's heart would not let her walk away from someone in need. She pushed aside the leaves and found an old woman lying on the ground, her clothes torn, her skin covered in dust, and her eyes clouded with age. Grandmother, what happened to you? Adeus asked, kneeling beside her. I was traveling to the next village, the old woman whispered, but my legs grew weak, and I fell. I have not eaten in 2 days. Without hesitation, Adeus opened her small pouch and took out the only food she had left, a boiled yam wrapped in leaves, meant for her mother's dinner. She placed it gently in the old woman's hands. Eat, grandmother. You need this more than we do tonight. The old woman ate slowly, her hands trembling. When she finished, she looked up at Adeus with eyes that suddenly seemed brighter than before, sharper, as though they could see straight into Adi's heart. Child, the old woman said, you have given me your last meal without asking who I am or what I can give you in return. Tell me, why did you help me? Adeus helped the woman to her feet and said simply, because you needed help, grandmother. That is all the reason anyone should need. The old woman smiled, and there was a kind of smile that seemed to carry the wisdom of 100 years. Then let me thank you properly. Walk with me to the river. Though it was already dark and Adi's mother would be waiting, she could not refuse the old woman, who leaned heavily on her arm as they walked. When they reached the riverbank, the old woman pointed to a small calabash floating gently on the water, glowing faintly like the last light of sunset. That calabash belongs to no one, the old woman said. It has floated on this river for 100 years, waiting for someone with a heart as generous as yours to claim it. Take it home, Adeus. But remember this, a gift given with love must be used with wisdom, not greed. Never let hunger for more blind you to what truly matters. Adeus waded into the shallow water and lifted the calabash. It was warm to the touch, and though it looked like an ordinary gourd, its surface shimmered faintly gold in the moonlight. When she turned to thank the old woman, she found that the riverbank was empty. The old woman had vanished, as though she had never been there at all. Only her footprints remained, and even those seemed to fade into the sand like morning mist under the sun. Adeus carried the calabash home, her heart both amazed and puzzled. That night, she placed it carefully on the small shelf beside her sleeping mat and went to sleep, too tired from the day's work to think much more about it. The next morning, Adeus woke to a strange smell filling her hut, the sweet smell of roasted yams and stewed vegetables. She sat up, confused, and saw that the golden calabash had opened on its own, and inside it was a warm, delicious meal, enough to feed 3 people. Mother, she called out, come and see. Her mother hurried in, and together they stared at the calabash in wonder. They ate the meal, and it was the most delicious food either of them had tasted in years. When they finished, the calabash closed itself again, empty and quiet, as if waiting. The next morning, the same thing happened, and the next. Every day, the golden calabash filled itself with warm food, enough for Adeus and her mother, and sometimes even enough to share with a hungry neighbor who happened to visit. Word began to spread through the village about Adi's strange and wonderful calabash. Some villagers were happy for her. Others, however, began to feel a different kind of hunger, not for food, but for what Adeus had. Among these was a man named Okanjo, who lived at the far end of the village. Okanjo was known for his sharp tongue and his sharper greed. He had once been given 3 goats by his uncle to help him start a small herd. But Okanjo had sold all 3 in a single market day, just to buy himself a fine new hat. When Okanjo heard about the golden calabash, his eyes lit up with a hungry gleam. He went to Adi's hut one afternoon, smiling in a way that did not quite reach his eyes. "Ades, my sister," he said sweetly, "I have heard of your wonderful fortune. Surely a kind woman like you would not mind sharing the secret of such a treasure with a poor neighbor like me." Ades, being kind and trusting, told him the truth. "I did not seek this calabash, Okanjo. I only helped an old woman who was in need, and she gave it to me as a gift. It was never about wanting treasure." Okanjo's smile grew thin. "I see," he said, though what he truly saw was an opportunity. That very night, Okanjo crept to the edge of the forest near the baobab tree, hoping to find an old woman of his own to trick into giving him a magic gift. He waited for hours in the darkness, swatting mosquitoes and grumbling under his breath, until finally, near midnight, he heard rustling in the bushes. "Please, help me," came a weak voice. Okanjo's heart leaped with greedy joy. He rushed to the bushes and found an old woman lying on the ground, just as Ades had described. But Okanjo did not kneel to comfort her, nor did he offer her food, for he had brought none. Instead, he grabbed her arm and pulled her up roughly. "Old woman, I know you carry magic. Give me a gift, and give it now, for I have come especially to find you." The old woman looked at him with clouded eyes and asked softly, "Why do you wish to help me, child?" Okanjo, not thinking carefully, blurted out the truth. "I do not wish to help you. I wish for a magic calabash, like the one you gave to Ades. Give it to me, and I will let you rest." The old woman was silent for a long moment. Then she said, "Very well. Since you have been honest about your greed, I shall give you a gift that matches your heart." She pointed to the river, where another calabash floated in the moonlight, shining gold just like Ades. Okanjo snatched it eagerly and ran home without even a word of thanks, his mind already filled with dreams of feasts and riches. He placed the calabash on his shelf that night and went to sleep with a greedy smile on his face, imagining mountains of food and perhaps even gold coins waiting for him in the morning. But when morning came, Okanjo woke to find his hut filled not with the smell of roasted yams, but with a foul, rotten stench. He rushed to the calabash and opened it, only to find it crawling with biting ants and stinging wasps, which poured out and chased him from his own home. He ran through the village, slapping at himself and shouting, while the other villagers watched and could not help but laugh. From that day, Okanjo became known throughout the village as the man who tried to steal magic through greed, and though it embarrassed him deeply, it also taught him a lesson he would never forget. Meanwhile, Ades continued to live simply and kindly. She did not boast about her golden calabash, nor did she use it only for herself. Whenever a family in the village fell on hard times, she would quietly send a portion of the calabashes, food to their door before the sun rose, so that no one felt ashamed to receive it. She helped repair the well when it broke. She sat with the sick when they had no one else to comfort them. She taught the village children how to weave baskets from palm leaves, sharing whatever skills she had, just as she shared whatever food she had. Years passed, and the little village of Ijoro began to change. Farms that had once struggled began to flourish. Partly because the rains finally returned, but also because the people of Ijoro had begun to help one another more. Inspired by Adi's example, neighbors who once quarreled over small things began to lend each other tools and seeds. Children who once fought over scraps began to share their meals at school. The village elder often said that Adi's Kalav had not truly changed the village. Adi's heart had. One evening, many years later, when Ades had grown old herself, with silver in her hair and lines of laughter around her eyes, she sat outside her hut watching the sunset. A young girl from the village, barefoot and curious, approached her. "Grandmother Ades," the girl asked, "is it true that your calabash is magic?" Ades smiled, the same warm smile she had carried her whole life. "The calabash is only a gourd, my child. The real magic was never inside it." "Then, where was the magic?" the girl asked, puzzled. "The magic," Ades said gently, "was in the choice to help a stranger who could give me nothing in return. The magic was in sharing. Even when I had little, the calabash simply reminded the world of a truth that was already inside my heart. And it can be inside yours too." The girl thought about this for a long moment, then asked, "Can I have a calabash of my own one day?" Ades laughed softly, patting the girl's head. You don't need a golden calabash to be kind, my child. Kindness is a gift that fills itself every single day, without any magic at all. Go, help your neighbor with her firewood, and you will see, you already carry the true calabash. Right here. She placed her hand gently over the girl's heart. The girl ran off, and true to Adi's words, she found her elderly neighbor struggling to carry a bundle of firewood. She rushed over to help. And though nothing magical happened that evening, no glowing calabash appeared. No golden light shone from the sky. The girl felt a warmth inside her chest that was better than any treasure. It was the quiet joy of helping someone simply because they needed it. As the years went on, the story of Adias and the golden calabash became one of the most beloved tales told around the fires of Igero. Mothers told it to their children before bed. Elders told it during festivals under the stars. And every single time the story ended the same way. Not with talk of gold or magic, but with a simple reminder. The true treasure is not what you hold in your hands, but what you carry in your heart. Kindness given freely will always return to you in ways more beautiful than gold. But kindness twisted by greed will only bring you what your greed deserves. And so, in the village of Ajiro, whenever someone new arrived, a traveler, a stranger, or even someone who seemed to have nothing to offer, the villagers would remember Adi's example. They would offer food before asking questions. They would offer shelter before asking for payment. They would help before asking what they might gain, for they had learned, through the tale of the golden calabash, that the greatest treasures in life are not found floating on rivers or hidden in magic gourds, but are grown quietly, patiently, in the soil of a generous heart. And that, the elders always said, is a treasure that no thief can steal, no drought can wither, and no greed can ever truly possess. For it belongs only to those who are willing, again and again, to give it away.